Hello everyone, my name is David Sisk. I'm the Director of EL Programs for Winston-Salem-Forsyth County Schools. And in this video, I'm going to go over the state of the L component of ECATS and how this ties into our L compliance for this school year, 2019-2020. Okay, so let's get started by taking a look at the timeline of ECATS and what was previously known as Easy LEP. This is just to give some of our new folks a little bit of a background, and for some of our veteran folks, this will simply be a review. So in 2015, we began using what was previously known as Easy LEP, but then the more general name was EdPlan, the L component of EdPlan. In the summer of 2018, we were under the impression that ECATS would become available for all school systems in North Carolina, but that decision was delayed. And then in the summer of 2019, the transition actually occurred to ECATS. And as you know, now we are in the fall of 2019, and there are still quite a few ongoing problems with ECATS. Hence, this video to give you an overview and provide you with some additional information. So this is what we're going to do for this year. We are going to streamline this process, our L process, for this year. So what does this mean? This means that we are going to use some aspects of ECATS, but not all aspects. Where the ECATS system has a problem, we're not going to use that component. And where the ECATS system is overcomplicating something or is overly cumbersome, we may also not use that component. So streamline simply means making something more simple, simplifying the process, or making it more efficient. So we are going to streamline this process for this year. So I'm going to take you through what this is going to look like. So first of all, the L parent notification of a student's L status. So we need to notify all parents of their child's L status. And there is no option to print an L parent notification letter for this purpose in ECATS, so we can't use that. So what we're going to do is we're going to send home the parent notification manually. Some of you have already done this at your school this year, so if you've already done this, you do not need to repeat that process. If you haven't done this, if you have not notified parents of their child's L status, then you need to do that. And we will make an L parent notification letter available to you, to the L coordinators and the ESL teachers, and you need to do this, send that letter home for K-12 before December 20th. So before our coming winter break, December 20th, that letter needs to go home informing parents of their child's EL status. So let's go back to ECATS and take a look at what is working and what is not working and what we are not going to use this year. So once you go into ECATS and you click on the L process component on the top of the screen for a particular child, you will get the following headings for each part of that L process. I'm going to take you through these and explain to you what we need to use and then what we are not going to use for this year. So the student info link, that's where you need to update the L subcode. The subcode is the letter A, B, or C. And that correlates to what type of service the child is receiving. A is comprehensive, B is moderate, and C is transitional. And you need to do that for grades K-12. Now, under the student info section, you have a smaller subsection, once you click into that, that has the L plan review committees, all that child's team members, and so on and so forth. We're not going to be using this function this year, and there's more to come on that later in this presentation. The student identification link, we're not going to use that other than to take a look at the access scores. Now, the access scores, when you look on that link, Up at the top of the screen, it has the 2019, the most recent access scores for that child. It also has the scores running vertically down underneath those access scores. And you can ignore the vertical scores. You're simply looking at the current 2019 access scores that are running horizontally. When you see that link, you will understand what I'm talking about. So the next two components, I'm going to make this easy for you. The language goals, we are not going to use that link. The modifications link, we're not going to use that because there are still some ongoing functionality issues with that link. Now, once you get to testing participation and accommodations, we're going to use this link for grades 3 through 12. I'm going to repeat. We're going to use this link for grades 3 through 12. You're not going to use this for grades K2. And these are the accommodations that ELL students will get on the EOGs, EOCs, NCFEs, and the NC check-in. So we're going to streamline that for grades 3 through 12 only, the tested grade levels. Now the next link under ELL process is the create the plan. So we're going to use that link to create the draft, just like we've done in years past, and then to create the final copy of a child's accommodation plan, of that student's ELL accommodation plan. And then part of that is the accommodation review document wizard that you're going to see on the main screen. Once that plan is finalized, you can go back to the wizard and you can print the ROAs which your test coordinators need. So we are going to use that function. And then the plan review, which is tied into that ELL plan review committee, we are not using that function of ECATS. Okay, moving on. Let's take a look at the ELL committee. So you don't need to make these decisions in isolation about a child's ELL accommodation. So you need to work with a group, what we call the ELL committee. And this quote comes directly from the North Carolina guidelines for testing students identified as EL students. But essentially it says that you need to make these decisions using a group decision format. So don't make those decisions in isolation about an EL student's EL accommodations. So, as we discussed earlier, we're not going to use the EL committee team function in ECATS this year. However, you still need to have a group to make that decision, and the group needs to meet at least once annually. I recommend more than once, but we're only requiring one annual meeting. And if you make any changes, of course, you need to pull that group back together. And the group needs to include the EL coordinator or the ESL teacher, and then it could include the following: the classroom teacher, the administrator, or an instructional facilitator. And you don't have to have a separate group for every EL student. One group is fine, just to make sure you're getting additional points of view on those accommodations. And then you have to simply maintain the documentation of that meeting. Some examples are a dated agenda with a sign-in sheet. So if there's a compliance question about whether that meeting occurred, we're going to have some documentation to show that we do have an EL committee at a particular school. So those decisions are being made in a group format and not just by an individual. So the parent notification of the EL accommodations. This is also another function of ECATS that is not functioning, not working at the moment. So what we're going to have to do is, obviously we've done those EL plans for grades 3-12, and we need to notify those parents of EL students' EL accommodations. So we will provide a simplified letter, and we did provide this letter that you can use to notify parents of a child's EL accommodations, and we shared this with the ESL teachers on September 19th. We will also share this with you again. It is a very simple letter that you can use to notify parents of a child's EL accommodations. We're also going to post these resources to our ESL teacher and EL coordinator Power School learning pages. So the priorities this year, and I think this has become clear based on what you saw on the previous slides. We will mainly be using ECATS to document L accommodations for state tests. So that's grades 3 through 12. So generally, that will focus on those grade levels, 3 through 12, but you may have some additional grades, or maybe the second grade COGATs, where you need to make an L plan for a child. However, in general, it will be for grades 3 through 12. We're also going to be using ECATS to print the ROAs, which are very important, both to document the accommodations, but also to help testing coordinators prepare their testing groups and their testing sessions, because that's a fairly intensive process for those testing coordinators, and they need those ROAs, those review of accommodations documents. Okay. So deadlines, these are very important deadlines. So we're talking about the L plans that you're creating in ECATS for grades 3 through 12, and then when the ROAs are due to the testing coordinators. So for early and middle college, and you have a very small population of L students, and I will be working with you specifically to help you through this process, that deadline is December 1st. For high schools, when you're thinking about the plans and the ROAs, that deadline is December 12th. And for elementary and middle schools, that deadline is January the 6th, when you need to have those L plans in ECATS finalized and the ROAs to your testing coordinator. But just let me remind you that it's always a good idea to communicate with your testing coordinator at your school, because your testing coordinator may have a different timeline. So these are general timelines, but please communicate with your testing coordinator about this process. Okay, so one of the last things we need to talk about is updating the ESL service codes in EdPlan. So we need to update those codes by January 22nd, 2020. So that's the end of the second quarter, and those need to be accurate as possible at that moment. So that means that you update the codes A, B, or C in ECATS to reflect the ESL service that the students are receiving at that moment. It's important to note that you do not update the L codes. The codes 1, 2, and 3, you do not need to update those, because that information comes directly from PowerSchool. And so a review of those codes, the 3A equals the L comprehensive service, 3B is moderate, and 3C is transitional. And this matches up with our LIEP, our language instruction educational plan that we use for our ESL programs. And so that needs to be updated by January 22nd of 2020. Okay, folks, so this concludes this somewhat short video of the state of the L ECATS components and how that will affect our process for the 2019-2020 school year. If you have questions, again, my name is David Sisk. Here is my email information, and let me know if and when you have questions. Thank you for your time. Goodbye.